Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks all for coming. We got a great panel today. You know, this is the strength of the New Jersey real estate market, from residential to industrial to retail, and we've got some families. So I'm going to go to my far right. Jeff Milonic is Northeast Region Partner of Bridge Industrial. They opened their office in Northeast Region in 2014. He's only completed 9 million square feet of transactions with a value of $2 billion. You know, Jeff. Next to Jeff is Matt Campbell, who is the Director of Acquisitions for Toll Brothers, one of the largest residential developers, you know, on the East Coast. Matt has been responsible for acquiring over 2,500 units valued in excess of $1.9 billion. The next guy, this is how old I am. You know, I started here in 68, so that's what is it, 54 years. So I've had a great time tonight talking to David Sanzari. Our next panelist is Ryan Sanzari. He's president of Alfred Sanzari Enterprises, third generation, 75 years of experience, owns over 6 million square feet of office, retail, and residential, of which we're sitting in one of his great hotels. And for me, it's very important because I used to go out with his grandfather for dinner 50 years ago. So that'll tell you how old I am. The next guy is somebody that I've known for just a few years. Know his dad pretty well. Jonathan Schultz, co-founder and managing principal of Onyx Equities. They started in 2004. They're one of the most diversified real estate companies in the New York metropolitan market, and I've been fortunate enough to know his dad for a very long time. So he is one of the best guys. Plus, he's down at Frenchman's Creek in Florida, which is pretty decent. Our next panelist is Managing Director of PGIM Real Estate. It's Ian Christ. He's been with the company for 18 years. Ian is responsible for all the new investment opportunities in the Midwest and the Northeast, and he's a member at Ridgewood Country Club, and he's a very good golfer. Our last panelist is Mike Pembroke, who's a partner and COO of Russo Development Company. Russo started in 1969. They've created over 8 million square feet of industrial and built, 1,500, 1,600 apartment units with 3,500 in the pipeline. They're one of the premier development families, in New Jersey. And I've been fortunate to know, Larry Russo for a long time. And we've got a great group, and thank you very much.
So my name is John Johnson, president of Ioreba. I'm the first president that served a 3-year term, and hopefully the last, I guess. So King, as Howard likes to call me. In any event, my team consists of Jeff Greif with First American Title. We got Ryan Tiger with the Puny Companies, and Kurt Kalafsky with the Aztec Corporation. So this is our future. So we're going to proceed in no particular order tonight. We had a great conversation with our speakers last week in preparation for this, and I think everyone here is going to learn something very important to their own futures, and we'll have some questions that we'll take at the end after the speakers are done presenting. So I think what I'm going to do is start with Ryan Sanzari and ask him to... It's working okay. Ask him to talk about a little bit about his family history, about what they have developed, where they are now, and where he wants to take the company in the future.
Thank you. Just getting this set. thank you very much, and thank you for having me on this panel, and thank you all for coming to Glen Point for this great night. We really appreciate it, and it's great to see everyone out and about. So our company was started 76 years ago by my grandfather after he got back from the war. Soon after he returned, he pivoted from being a sheet metal worker to building single-family homes, which then turned into multifamily, industrial, and the rest is history, as they say. For several years, the several most recent decades and years, my father, David, has run the company and grown the company. And I'm very fortunate to be, around to try my best to keep things going. So today we own and manage over 6 million square feet of real estate, and our plans are to continue growing while maintaining what we have to the absolute best of our ability, and really giving our tenants the absolute best experience possible being in our buildings, because something that I know my grandfather instilled in my father, and my father instilled in me, was that our tenants, when they make the decision to sign a lease with us, they're putting their trust in us to create and establish their home for their business. So that means a lot to us, and we certainly never want to give them a reason to regret that.
Thanks, Ryan. You're not off the hook yet, but we'll get back to you. So I think I'm going to jump to Jeff Milonic, head of Bridge Industrial Partners, and if you could, Jeff, give us your ideas, opinions on where you think industrial's at, where it's heading, and what's coming down the road at the end of this year as far as deals and finding opportunities.
Sure. Thanks, John, and great seeing everybody. It's been long overdue for all of us to get together. It's so great to see faces and names and things I've forgotten. Because at the end of the day, real estate has very little to do with buildings, everything to do with people, right? That's why we're all here. But, look, we've obviously been very active in the industrial space. Bridge is focused from a business point of view, which is the reason I really joined him, because I finally saw a business plan I could understand and apply to New Jersey, was to work on infill locations close to market. We called them last mile at the time. Those sites were often old manufacturing facilities, and with old manufacturing facilities, as we know in New Jersey, they come with the fact that you have to demo, you have to do geotech to support the buildings, because a lot of them are by waterways. You have environmental issues. The second project we did was the E-Port site down in Perth Amboy. Many of you know it by the Outer Bridge. We ended up building, it's about 1.5 million feet in 3 buildings. And there were just under 80 areas of concern as far as the DEP was concerned. So the first thing I had to check was to make sure my capital understood what that meant and would they support me after we literally opened up the ground. And we've proven ourselves to be pretty successful undertaking those kind of complex projects. I brought a lot of my old partners from my old company over with me, and we, Dan Aykroyd has coined a saying, we brought the band back together, and we just took off. I think we're a little ahead of the market just by pure luck. A lot of other people are engaged in that marketplace right now, but it's not for the faint of heart. I don't sleep at night until I'm out of the ground, to be perfectly blunt with you, because I don't care how much you test a site, you don't test every ounce of ground in that site. And until you're done putting dozers and backhoes and track hoes on the ground, digging up the dirt, you really don't know what you have. So when concrete footings are going and I see walls going up, I can catch my breath and move to the next project. So we've been pretty active, as I heard. We actually did construct 9 million feet over the past 5 years. We did have a flurry of activity at the end of last year and closed on several land leases and other properties, so that my current pipeline, including what I've built so far, is 18.6 million feet in the state, so that should keep us busy for a while. God knows the approval process will keep us busy for a while. That's a whole nother topic for another day. But we still firmly believe in that market. E-commerce has certainly spurred it on. We went into COVID with many projects underway. We were told to stop, by the governor, if you all recall that. And, as I look around the room, I'm thinking to myself, did any of us ever think we'd live through something like we lived through? But it's incredible what we did. We were fortunate because one of my project managers said, I think I found out how we can keep building up in Phillipsburg. He says, aren't liquor stores an essential business? I said, yes, they are, and I try to use them every day I can. He says, well, guess what? We just signed a deal with White Claw. Bingo. The mayor was thrilled, we were thrilled, and we were able to build right through the shutdown on that. Again, I'd rather be lucky than right. Sometimes luck puts you in the right place to execute. So we're real bullish. Look, I don't believe for a minute e-commerce is going to overtake retail. I just don't see it. Is e-commerce approaching 15% of retail sales today? I think that's about an accurate stat. However, knowing my wife the way I do, retail is experiential, right? I mean, we just did a deal with TJ Maxx in North Philly. That store amazes me what they do. Every week they turn over the entire inventory so people can come in and touch stuff. So there's going to be a strong place for retail, but e-commerce is growing, make no mistake about it. And we've all learned how to click and ship. So as I look at the market now, we're very bullish going forward. The fundamentals are still in place. Where New Jersey, in my opinion, has gotten a little out of whack over the years is we would overbuild the markets we played in, right? We forgot about the supply-demand metrics. Developers like to build, I get it. Whether we like it or not, we're more disciplined today because we have to be. Look at the vacancy rates in the markets we're playing in today. New Jersey is somewhere between 0.5% and 1.5% from north to south. Unheard of. I've never seen this before. Jonathan and I were talking about rents before we got started in the business. It's absurd. You're looking at rentals in the Meadowlands in the high 20s, mid-20s for sure, but soon approaching high 20s. 40% year-over-year rent growth. So we're bullish on it from that. However, as anybody in my office will tell you, I tend to be sometimes a curmudgeon when it comes to market cycles. I've seen too many of them. I got into business right at that thing called 90, 91, 92. Had no idea what business I got into. Figured out how to survive it, and that was my Harvard MBA. But we did. And ever since then, I've just been mindful of trying to, you can't time the market, but as I look out today, and I spoke to an economist, I'm chair of NAIOP National this year, and I'm traveling around the country, and I had a conversation with an economist in LA last week, and we just compared notes. I mean, if you look at what's happening now, you've got oil prices that are going up, you've got interest rates that are creeping. My opinion, interest rates go up, the compression of cap rates is going to cease, if not for a while, for a period of time. The inflationary experiences we're going to have are going to be affecting consumers, right? So we know how that works. So my own opinion is I'm looking for a bit of a, call it readjustment to be maybe more politically correct, and I hate to use the R word. Fourth quarter, first quarter, I think we're going to see a bit of an adjustment. However, with the metrics of the market where it is, and as sound as the industrial business is right now, I don't see that as disastrous, to be honest with you. I can't even keep up with the rental rate increases. When they go up, it's great if you're going to exit a property, but guess what? If I go to replace that piece of ground with another ground, it also went up 40%. How do I make that work, right? And then we're dealing with the banks, and one of our financial partners is just down the road from me on my left here, and we have this conversation a lot about where are things going to be, what's it going to look like. So I just think it's a time to just be cautious, but still bullish, very bullish on the industrial marketplace.
So let's switch over a little bit and go with residential, and let's hear from Matt Campbell from Toll Brothers as to what they're doing and the state of their business.
We cover 24 states and 60-plus markets. We are in the for-sale business, single families, townhomes, for-sale condos. We are in the multifamily rental apartment business. We are in student housing. So pretty much any kind of residential opportunity, feel free to give me a call and I can let you know whether or not we have an interest in it. Locally here in New Jersey, we close on average about 500 homes a year. Our average delivered price point on those homes last year was just over $1 million. Wow. We range communities from Ocean County up to Bergen County, really heavily focused right now in Bergen and Monmouth County. We have a large portfolio of active adult for-sale communities, whether it's active adult townhomes or for-sale single-family homes. We are very active in the affordable housing settlement agreements, which anybody that has any kind of multifamily or for-sale opportunities, you know, that has driven the market since March of 2015 when COA was stripped of their powers and everything went before the courts. We continue to look actively at alternative ways of buying property. There's not many vacant pieces of property available in New Jersey if you've looked out of your car window driving around lately. So I am happy, as there's a lot of office folks here or industrial, if there's high vacancy rates or you're looking for an alternative way to maybe position a property. Municipalities are now, again, with the affordable housing requirement and also with potentially a lost rateable or a blighted property, residential maybe does not look as bad as it used to in the past. So happy again to have those conversations as we've successfully redeveloped office buildings. The old AMP headquarters up in Montvale, New Jersey, we're developing right now with 80 townhomes, 64 market rate and 16 affordable units. Pearson Education Building in Upper Saddle River, we have 186 market rate 3-story townhomes there as well. We've also been very successful on golf course communities throughout the state. And we continue to look at all different avenues and options. We have a very strong pipeline. We currently have 14 communities open for sale right now and another 20 different opportunities in various stages of the entitlement process on top of those 14 communities. So very, very active in New Jersey right now. And fortunately for us, sales prices and the velocity of sales pace has kept up with cost increases, which everyone is extremely aware of. So fortunately for us, we've been able to absorb those cost increases over the last year to a year and a half with the sales price and pace of those communities. But again, very active throughout New Jersey. And please, feel free to reach out or give me a call if there's something that you don't have that's a traditional residential play. I'd be happy to take a look at it and let you know if there would be any interest. Thank you.
All right, let's go to John Scholes, Onyx Equities. We'd like to hear about how you see the office market, A, B, C, where we're going, who's taking space, who's giving up space, and what your thoughts are.
Good to see old faces and new faces, and candidly, it's good to just see faces. It's been a while since we've all gotten together as an industry. It's exciting to get back out, meet people, hear ideas, and learn, about, I think, our industry is going to go through a lot of dynamic changes and shifts, as you've been seeing over the last 2 years, and I don't think that's going to stop. Now, office, which obviously has not had the momentum of residential and industrial as far as the supply-demand issue, and then just this whole new way of how a freedom has been given to people where they don't have to go back to work every day, 5 days a week like they used to. It's like when you take freedom away, it's hard to bring that back. So personally, I think it's sort of left the station as far as how we're going to work in the future. I think a 5-day work week is going to be a thing of the past. I think all different companies are going to figure out sort of what that means from different industries, from law to life sciences to entertainment. They're all going to have a different way of how they work. What I do believe is there is a flight to quality going on right now. Class A-plus facilities, we're seeing a lot of leasing activity. I think the fact that you want people to come back to work and create an environment that makes people feel that they want to, you're going to have to do things that you didn't have to do before. And I know we were amenitizing all of our buildings before this happened. But I think we're going to even have to go to a next level, almost like as if we're hoteliers rather than office building owners. I think you're going to see a lot of movement. Companies are going to want to create something that brings their people back in a new, fresh environment. So that's why we're seeing a lot of movement, where most people in the old days would tend to, stay where they are. It's a pain in the ass to move. Now it's like it's something that they feel they need to do. So we're seeing that. The interesting thing, too, I think we're going to see a lot of change in the B and C product. I think with industrial rents where they are and just the residential market, I think we're underserved in both. And I think we'll continue to be. Yet, we may have a slowdown with what's going on right now, but I do believe that there'll be a lot of change in products. And we're seeing it around the state. We're seeing office buildings knocked down and industrial buildings being built. We're seeing residential replacing office. And I think we're going to see that in different towns and different areas, and that'll be a constant theme over the next 2 or 3 years. Because at the end of the day, as much as we don't want to change, we have to change with what our customer is, which is tenants and residents and retailers, and we got to change with the new demands of how they want to occupy space and actually occupy and serve their communities. And as far as, we're talking about retail and e-commerce, I mean, there's this halo effect that's also happening with retail, where native brands started out being just online, and then they're seeing the cost of acquisition of a customer go up as online gets more expensive to do that with Facebook and all these other platforms out there, and you're starting to see them take spaces like Warby Parker and other digital native brands now taking retail spaces. There's tons of new franchise restaurant concepts coming out. So I think, to me, this is probably one of the most exciting times to be in real estate, because it's going to be the most change that we feel over the next 5-10 years with just how people are going to operate and think. Technology's pushing that. So I find it's going to be a really exciting time for our industry. Not everybody likes change, but if you grab onto it and learn about it and just get out there and try to listen and learn, you'll find there's tons of opportunities. So I'm looking forward to being a part of that, and I think it's going to be exciting.
Thank you, John. It seems I'm going in order of the table, so I'm going to stick with it. So Ian Christ from Peru, could you tell us what you're involved in now and what you're interested in as far as financing, and what all these guys that are speaking can look forward to coming out of your group?
Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Ian Christ, and I work at PGIM Real Estate. We're the real estate investment management business for Prudential Financial. We have a debt book of business, which is about $125 billion, where we're a lender of capital. And then we have an equity book of business where we raised about $75 billion in equity capital from investors that we invest in real estate deals. And I represent the equity book. In 2021, we probably did about $13 billion in new acquisitions. In 2022, we expect to do pretty similar levels. I would say right now that we like industrial, we like apartments, we like retail, and we like a lot of the alternative or niche sectors like self-storage or lab office or single-family residential, or single-family rental, student housing, senior housing, and those property types. I think the last few weeks have been pretty choppy. I think it's hard to borrow capital at a 4 and buy a deal at a 3. And so I think some of the real low cap rates that we've seen on the apartments and on the industrial could reprice a little bit here if the debt market really stays the way that it is. We don't feel that it's anything catastrophic right now, but it certainly feels like there could be a repricing over the next few weeks. So I'm maybe in Jeff's camp down there that we need to continue to watch everything closely. But there's a ton of liquidity in the market, as everyone here knows. Fundamentals feel really good in most product types. I think on the office side, we probably have a little bit less interest, but I agree with everything that John said, where there's certainly a flight to quality, and office has really had to become amenitized. It's really had to kind of change course to attract tenants back to the office, and so we're fairly cautious on the office side, and I think we really just want to see how that settles out before we make a whole bunch of bets. If it's 3 or 4 days a week that people are back in the office, if some tenants don't bring their employees back at all, what does that mean? Does that mean the bottom 15% of the market falls out, or is it the bottom 20%, or is it the bottom 5%? We're not really sure, and I think until that sorts itself out, we're going to be a little careful on the office side. But overall, very active. We love New Jersey. We've done quite a bit here historically with a lot of folks in the room, and looking forward to doing more.
Thanks, Mike. Last but not least, Mike Pembroke, Russo Development. We'd love to hear about your mixed use, your industrial, and all the exciting projects that you're involved with now.
Sure. Thank you. Good to see everybody. So I've been with Russo for about 20 years, and I can honestly say I have no idea what the industrial market is doing right now whatsoever. I have no clue where the market is, except on our project, actually. We're doing it together. I know exactly what I'm doing on that one. But no, it's it's amazing. It's, you hear something every other day where that can't be. That can't be the case. It's not the case. And you hear that every day in the industrial market. So, things have changed so quickly in a short period of time. We had a project that we're starting down at Exit 2 because back in 2019 we figured, we can't buy land reasonably anywhere in our neighborhood, so we'll go look at some land down at Exit 2 where we can start maybe in 10 years and figure it out down the road. Well, since 2019 till today, we couldn't build that fast enough, and the land down there has appreciated more than 10 times what we have under contract. So you start to hear things of, land appreciating 10 times in a 3-year period. It's just incredible what's happening in the market. But I think Jeff said something very important, which is, in the past, as developers, we would just build ourselves out of opportunities. So, if we could build it, we'd build it as quick as we possibly could and deliver more to the market than it can handle. And that really doesn't seem to be the case now because we physically cannot. It just, land is constrained in so many areas up in the northern part of the state, especially with even Exit 8A. Opportunities that existed before to overbuild really don't exist anymore. So, we see really a long run in industrial, and we're trying to do a lot more. We have a big project up in the Meadowlands and a couple other smaller infill projects that we're doing, and we can't get enough because we made the mistake of selling a few industrial buildings back in 2006. We thought we were doing the right thing. Record high prices back then. It was like $140 a foot for industrial in northern New Jersey, where today the land's worth double that. So we could have gone to the beach for 10 years and done better. But we ended up redeploying some capital into multifamily residential. It's been a big part of our business the last number of years. We've been delivering about 1,000 units a year, and big focus for us. It's a little more blocking and tackling. You're not going to get home runs doing industrial multifamily development, but for us, it's a good way to diversify our portfolio. And we're really trying to develop in towns that are easy to do business in. Towns like Woodbridge, Hackensack, Union, Orange, even. A lot of different towns that are just welcoming and willing to do business and willing to give you good opportunities and work with you. That's really where we spend most of our time because it's hard enough as it is. And if you have a town that can work with you and really support you through the process, it makes it a lot easier. So really, multifamily and industrial is going to be where we're really going to grow in the coming years here.
I'm going to give the audience a chance to ask questions. So anyone want a question they have in mind, raise a hand. Any questions, any particular questions for the panelists?
No, it's been 2 years, but you could at least try, right?
Everybody's still a little shy. I have a question. I want to, if you could talk a little bit about how the towns are. You mentioned the towns. And I know Matt mentioned towns also, and we've also talked about having to redevelop properties. You know, I've seen up here in northern New Jersey, towns fighting, you know, conversion of old buildings have been sitting empty for a while, and you guys are dealing with towns all the time and trying to convert. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add to what's going on in the approval process?
I could, you know, take a shot at that. I mean, it's really life's too short in trying to develop in towns where they don't want you. Eventually, you know, I mean, we'll pick fights and battles where we have to, but you know, and we've done it many times over the years. But we've learned that when you're really facing an uphill battle, even the ones that are straight down the middle don't always end up that way. I mean, you can tell you that, you know, for sure in a project we worked on recently where it couldn't have been simpler from the outset. And the development or the entitlement process got a little bumpy in the middle of it, and these guys were great. They stuck through it from the beginning, middle, and end, and were there, you know, at the closing all along. But even the easy ones, you know, don't always turn out that way. And we always tell ourselves that, you know, high barrier to entry. If it was easy, anyone could do it. So it makes you feel better about, you know, banging your head against the wall. But it's really important for towns, especially the multifamily side. If they get it and they understand that, you know, having a financial agreement is a critical part of the process, and they're willing to work with us on providing a pilot and realizing a pilot is really better for the town in most cases, and how that message is communicated to the public and the communities is important, because everyone looks at a pilot as being a giveaway to the developer and, you know, a tax break to the developer when it's an essential part of the process, and you can't build in most cases without this pilot because of the high taxes. In Kearney, for example, you know, we have pilots in our projects in Kearney at $2,500 a unit, right? Conventional taxes are probably $7,200 to $7,500 a unit in Kearney, so it makes the project completely unviable unless you can have that in place. So the towns that get it, the towns that support it and can communicate that to their constituents really are successful in these processes, and the towns that can't get left behind, and you know, that's okay. It's not, you know, every area doesn't need to have this certain level of redevelopment, but if a town is motivated to do it, you know, that's really critical to getting us comfortable to wanting to work and do multiple projects. We've done many projects in Kearney, phases in Union, for example, so we'll continue to work in towns that are developer friendly, because, you know, it benefits them and benefits us as well.
Yeah, I think I would agree with Mike there. The other thing is, you look at this panel here tonight, because I've been in the business a long time. I'm not going to say how long, but it's a long time. There's a difference in the thought process of successful developers today, and look, many before us were very successful, but particularly one I used to work with would be kind of demanding of the town, walk into a town, say, you need me, you need this, you need that. That doesn't fly today, right? So like Mike and others on this panel, what we try to do is identify projects that have languished for a period of time. We do, on the industrial side, many old facilities, like the Ingersoll Rand facility sat, you know, blighted for 10, 15 years. I think we were number 8 in on the redevelopment. The one thing the mayor of Phillipsburg wanted to know from me, 2 things. First was, you're number 8, Jeff. Are you for real? Because I am really tired of doing this dance with other developers. And how fast can you get my people to work, right? So we've had a lot of success there. We had a lot of success in Perth Amboy, redeveloping the old Asarco smelting site, where thousands of people were employed by the town. We started developing that. We were fortunate enough to find Target for the first lead tenant in the building. Funny story is they made me sign an NDA. You can't tell the mayor, you can't tell this who we are. That's fine. They all come in, all in their 30s, suits and ties and everything nice. They open up their little portfolios and it's got Target circles all over it. Mayor looks at me, I'm like, I didn't say a word, did I? But the point is, when they asked her to avail themselves of the community center to test the market for employees, because I'll tell you what, that is one of the biggest challenges we're finding right now is the labor base. They wanted to start up with about 150 people. 600 people lined up the next day in line for jobs. The mayor was besides herself in tears. So we try to be as selective as we can to solve a problem either from a blighted site or a contaminated site. We don't do really well in greenfields. I know we went a little bit on that property across the street, Mike, from you down at exit 2 there, and we quickly realized we didn't really have a competitive edge. And the pricing that went for is like, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't catch my breath. We won't be in those markets. We don't bring any value there. If we can identify a real need in the community, approach the community about solving a problem, that's where we like to be.
Mr. Schubert has a question.
One of the things I've been seeing is a lot of the receivers are taking back, some of the major malls in the state of New Jersey. Does the residential team, like, Toll Brothers or any of the people that do a lot of residential, are they interested in those things? Their receiverships, I mean, there's three or four malls that are major malls in the state that, have definitely a good, residential look.
Sure, Jeff. I'd say we're absolutely interested in that. I think, unfortunately, Mike and I have looked at a couple of the same ones. I've been on the losing side of a few of those, so I think Mike does a little bit better looking at it up front. But yeah, we absolutely look at those opportunities. And again, it's portions of those sites. It's the entire site. It's working with multiple parties to figure out the highest land use. A lot of times there's the same individuals that are looking at these properties over and over again. So we've sort of started to talk amongst ourselves and rather than cannibalizing each other, figuring out ways to work together to get to the highest land use and see what strengths each developer has. And again, going back to the approval standpoint, it's also presenting a viable option to a municipality who may not be able to publicly endorse a project, but understands that they have a failing asset that's going to have to be redeveloped. And they need a team that's capable of delivering and executing, not only from a capital standpoint, but just from the experience and the wherewithal to get to that point.
Recently, 700 Plaza Drive went back to the Carlton Group. It was a loan with Rialto Capital Management, and they came back in and paid the loan down, plus paid Hart's, which was a lawsuit. And, I think that location of 700 Plaza, they may knock some of those buildings down and do some residential there. I'm seeing even hotels, a lot of hotels that are going back to lenders, the same kind of thing. I have a question for Jeff. What's the highest industrial rental rates that you've heard of in the state of New Jersey?
I heard a number, and we were just talking about this out, I forget who I was talking to out there. When we're trying to do our underwriting and our investment memos, we're all putting in current cap rates and compression and et cetera, anticipating where we'll be, and then you search and you try to comp out rental rates. Rental rates I've heard up in the Meadowlands of $28 a foot.
Right.
And I think that's pretty accurate, is pretty much what I've heard. But I look at the markets I'm playing at. I'm an old 8A guy back from the day, and at 475, I was pretty happy to make a deal. If you can find a building today, we fortunately have a site, but it happens to be a Superfund site we're cleaning up, so there's that. But we're probably going to have a $15 on that number, that project by the time, with a pilot.
I've heard some down in the Meadowlands that are, 21 net, like in Lyndhurst. Branca's building down there, a couple other ones that have gotten sold. But,
I think anything new is you're going to be mid-upper 20s. Your second generation even is going to be in low 20s just because of where it is.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Jeff, if I could just go back to the malls for a second. Matt is very gracious to say that, but it's not true. These guys, when they see something they like, they'll really go after it, and obviously tremendously successful. But the malls certainly are an interesting opportunity for us multifamily-wise, and it gets complicated because a lot of times, whether it's receivership or you have multiple REAs across mall property, different owners and different sections, but the key is nice if you control everything, but you don't have to control the entire mall. You can take it in bits and pieces, and a lot of times if you have an end cap and you're able to work and see what the opportunity is there, then obviously that will benefit other opportunities within the mall itself. I mean, we've worked a lot with Transformco recently, who was the old Sears bankruptcy, and they have a lot of opportunities really in this area and across the country. And if we're able to figure that out, that allows us to move into other areas. But there's you're going to see a lot of malls in the next 5 years start to come over and be redeveloped and have a higher and better use. And there could be still some of the mall left. So sometimes you could develop portions of the mall, and it may improve what's left of the retail that is at the mall and rebrand itself too, which is another good second life for portions of the malls that are really just too big in their big box status, as it is now.
Have a question this end of the table?
Hey, Ryan Tiger here. There seems to be a lot of bullishness across the country, nationwide, on the residential and industrial marketplaces. Just curious what the panel thinks could possibly lead to the next downturn in these environments, industrial and residential markets.
I'd be happy to jump in first. I was actually just out in LA last week at Icon West. We have an Icon East here in June, little NAIOP plug there. It's a good event to go to. But I was out visiting and meeting with chapters out there in my role. And if I thought our market was tight, it's like beyond unbelievable what's going on out there right now. I had often heard of this thing called the Inland Empire, and you fly into LA, you see the LA port, you figure, oh, it's just a little, it's damn near 2 hours away from LA by the time you get to there. It's probably 40% of the goods of the United States go through that marketplace, right? So super bullish on that. I think like our focus at Bridge is the core markets. We're in Chicago, Miami, New York, New Jersey, LA, Seattle, Vancouver, London, and soon to head into Toronto. All exhibit the same tendency of the market, meaning high barrier to entry, high barrier to get approved, et cetera. We believe those markets will always maintain the demand because they also are high population density markets. And as my old mentor, Ray Keller, told me, he gave me the secret to industrial one day. He promised me not to tell anybody, but he's passed on. He said, Jeff, within 400-mile radius of New York City is probably a third of the population of the US. Made sense. They consume stuff. Made sense. We put stuff in warehouses. That hasn't changed in 40 years. It's the same dynamic today, except we want it tomorrow. Right, so you're still going to, in the high population areas, the major demographics want the goods today. I think those markets will always be good. We don't compete in Dallas. I used to build a lot in Dallas, but there's no restriction on land in Dallas. It's pretty much as flat as a pancake, right? The zoning out there is, it's harder today than it was. Really very easy. It just took me 5 years to get a project approved here in Jersey. That's why a lot of people don't compete in North Jersey. So I'm cautious about some of these secondary, tertiary marketplaces throughout the country. I've got a stint coming up. I'll be visiting chapters in Ohio, Cincinnati, whatever, Columbus. They've never been super strong markets, but today they're on fire. It'll be interesting to see as interest rates go up and such, cap rates stop their compression, how all those will play out. But again, I come back to the business we're in still has strong demands across the board.
Yeah, I think from a residential standpoint, I'd echo a similar comments to what Jeff had said. First 5 years on the residential side, that's pretty quick for us, Jeff. So, but on the residential side, we continue to see supply and demand, and there's been, I think some of the last estimates was over the last 13 years, some upwards of 6 million homes that's short of supply. The resale market continues to be constrained. Looking at stats this morning to prepare for this discussion, I think 57% of homes find a buyer right now within 2 weeks, and nearly half of those are under contract within a week, 44%. So as we continue to see the supply, builders, my competitors across the state and across the nation continue to allocate communities. So we're restricting sales, even with these elevated sales prices and sales velocity. Builders continue to restrict sales and are still doing extremely well. I think we're closely watching the interest rates and inflation and how that impacts the consumer. Fortunately for Toll Brothers, we typically have a very strong buyer profile. Our buyers have very high credit scores, low LTV values compared to the market. So fortunately, our buyers are able to absorb interest rates as they rise a little bit better. But we continue to see that the undersupply of homes over the last 13 years helping us with that shortfall of housing. And it's again, fortunately, the sales pricing and pace has been able to make up for us on the biggest challenge for us right now is the cost of goods and the cost of building a home. And also the labor to get onto the job, the cost of that just because of the short labor supply.
What's the short of housing in New Jersey? How many units are needed? They say 4 to 6 million are needed in the United States.
Yeah, I think if you look at the housing supply nationally, back in the 70s, you were supplying 1.7 million a year. I think as the last year was about 1 million, while there's 2.4 million households created. So if you're looking straight at the statistics, there's a significant undersupply. Builders have caught up. You know, the pause initially through COVID, builders paused, and then there's been an extremely accelerated sales frenzy. So we will start catching up significantly over the next year to 2 years. But there's still, we see the demand continue to come across nationally.
The other thing I think we need to look at it in a different way is with the office changing, and I personally think it will, I mean, we're talking about residential industrial, it's like the favorite child up here, but office, to me, will still play a core component of what a culture of a company is. I just like, you know, remember when like Amazon and the internet came and no more bricks and mortar, and now we're seeing, obviously that's not the case, it's just gonna change. We were 50% over retail then. How much over office are we? We're seeing a lot of it get knocked down. I think the B&C product is gonna, you know, definitely cull. But like now when you live in your apartment or your house, you may be there 2 days a week that you weren't there before COVID. So I just think like with housing, you're gonna look at it differently. You're gonna, you know, need it more during the week than you thought you did as a younger person or people that, you know, have families. So, and I think we're so low on supply anyway that this is just going to be another component to keep that going, you know, especially in the rental market. Now, I think, you know, inflation and rates are going to slow down, but there's not even enough product anyway. So I think apartments, you know, are going to be still flowing over the next 2.5, 3 years easily with just, you know, how many people there are. You know, it's demographics too. It's like the millennials are old now. They used to be this young group of people. They're older, right? So, you know, they're having kids and you know, we still have the same things, you know, generation after generation of how we have families and how we grow as a culture. So I think that part of the, you know, population, you know, did COVID push them maybe sooner and accelerate? Yeah, but I still think there's plenty of people now having families and wanting to move into more spacious places in the suburbs. Industrial, I think the way you have to look at it, besides just what's going on, I mean, through, you know, the war and just supply chain issues through COVID. I mean, we have to look at how we store things and use things and create industrial real estate in a whole different way. I mean, you know, like couldn't get medicines. You know, look at all the things that we didn't realize were so, you know, nimble in our sort of global supply chain that maybe we're going to think about that differently moving forward. So chip factory, I mean, there's so many new opportunities for growth in these different sectors now that it's just starting. We're at the beginning that I don't think we really fully understand where that's going to go. And over time, I think it'll create a dynamic amount of space needs for both residential, industrial, manufacturing, all sorts of new things. Life sciences is definitely changing. All these new technologies are allowing companies to do things they couldn't do 3-4 years ago. So should be interesting, see how it goes.
How long do you think before the office market come back?
How many years? I mean, listen, we're at the beginning of what that's even going to mean. If I told you a number, I'd be, you know, BSing you. I mean, if I knew that, I definitely would probably not be sitting here. But I think it's going to be an experiment that we all go through, and like we're already seeing occupancies go up. we're seeing it's like it's a battle, right? It's like you're so used to working a certain way. You thought it worked, now all of a sudden you got to change it. No one really wants to do that. And I don't think it's the office. I think it's the commute. Like, I don't know anyone that really wants to stay home all day. I mean, you know, you want to get out, get dressed, go get your cup of coffee, you know. I think co-working spaces, you're going to see them actually, I think, flourish much more in the suburbs than you've seen in the past. I do believe that. And I think, like, over the next 18 months, we'll see. Like, because anything I say right now, I'll be wrong, right? I mean, we're going to pivot and learn from what people really need and want and how they'll operate eventually. But it's not good, in my mind, it's going to be core. Most of the tenants we're dealing with, maybe they're taking a little less space, but like they're thinking people are coming in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right? I mean, that's what they're thinking. You know, some of the people are saying, if you come in 3 days, you get a desk. 4 days, you get to pick where your desk is. If you come in 2 days, you're a hot desk, right? So they're gauging who, you know, is coming in and how they're going to work and how they're going to operate within their teams. We're seeing, I don't know how you train younger people when you're not around them on Zoom. I just don't see how that's going to work. I mean, so I think like this is going to evolve and, you know, I think during COVID, you could sustain, and certain companies grew, of course, but you can sustain, but we're not so sure if you can grow the way you used to, if not sort of having that dynamic. And we'll see. But I think it's going to be, you know, vibrant as far as like what office culture is over the next 18 months. Yeah. In a new way.
But John, I'm still concerned with this millennials or old comment.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
go.
like, if they're old, what does that make me?
Older. Look, you got a little gray.
I thought I was the young guy.
I
I still think I'm the young guy here, but I guess
It's
not.
interesting
Jeez.
because, and I totally agree with a lot of, if not all, everything Jonathan just said. You know, so many things are changing, have changed. You know, the supply chain and what that's doing to tenant improvement, tenant build-outs, what that's doing to lead times. You know, it's causing us to approach deals in a different way, yes. Working from home, hybrid work schedules, of course, you know, that's a change, certainly a more dramatic change than we saw before. But a lot of things are the same as they were before. The psychology behind the employer is the same before. They still have the same objectives in terms of what they want from their team, what they need from their employees. The employee's perspective, okay, the work from home, yes, that throws a variable into things. But, and I also agree that how we're not seeing this mass exodus. So I know what I'm hearing, I know what a lot of people are saying out there. We have not seen that translate in our Class A office product. We're seeing high activity, especially, you know, here at Glen Point. We're seeing a lot of activity, more so than pre-pandemic, like significantly more so. So is the head count up to where it was? No, it's not. Are we seeing that ramp up? Yes, we are. But do we expect it to get back to where it was? Probably not. And I'm obviously going to qualify that, but by saying that I have no idea, you know, I don't know this for a fact. None of us do. But that's certainly what it seems like. But the employee the psychology of the employee seems to be very consistent with what it was before, which is that I don't want to go to some place that sucks every day to work. I don't want to, you know, hate my day every day when I go to work. I want to enjoy myself. I want to feel, you know, relatively good every day, and you're going to get the most out of me as an employee. What we felt before the pandemic was just sort of validated recently by what I'm saying right now, which is that, you know, they wanted to be in a good place every day to work prior to COVID, and they still very much do. So I guess just the point that I'm trying to make is that while there's so many things that give us a billion reasons to believe that everything's changing, there are so many things that are still very much the same.
John, what about Manhattan and vacancy there and the fact that employees don't want to go back to work?
Yeah, and you know, I think, is this on? Manhattan usually was the first to come back and the last to go, right? I mean, for years. And if you look at residential, it's way back and more than it was as far as pricing before COVID, right? It's 100%. If you look at even retail's coming back to a certain extent. Obviously, you know, they've had to drop their rents and cut some deals, but like there's activity and there's leases being done. In the Class A buildings, you know, my friends at SL Green fully leased One Vanderbilt at like ridiculous high prices, and Hudson Yards got leased, and now One Madison's getting leased. But you know, B and C, it's tough. I mean, I don't know what happens to that product. I think it's going to have to be reimagined, like we're reimagining B and C product in the suburbs, right? It's just harder in New York. You know, if you go to Midtown, it's mostly office buildings. It needs more resi there for it to survive in the future, in my mind, because you're not going to need all that B and C office space that's there. And there's a lot of knockdowns happening for new deals as well. So it's just going to be harder, I think, personally. I don't know if you agree with that.
We have some clients that are moving staff to Texas and to Florida, and they're subletting spaces in Manhattan.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing pretty strong leasing activity in most of the gateway markets. Those were the first, really post-COVID, it was, the bifurcation was urban versus suburban. So really you saw the urban markets get wiped because there was density, right? People didn't want to be near anyone else. They didn't want to be in public transit. They wanted space. So we saw a flight from the urban locations. And that's fixed itself. So if you go to any of these urban markets, like John had mentioned with New York, we've seen really strong activity on the residential side. The great thing about apartments is you can always lease them, right? It's just a pricing exercise. During COVID, that wasn't the case. Like you saw New York City apartment occupancy drop into the 70s in many deals. With the recovery in occupancy, now you have recovery in pricing power, the free rent's burned off, everyone's pushing rate, and the rates are stronger than what you had pre-COVID. So if you go to any restaurant in New York, it's busy right now, the streets feel great. You know, I think people are nervous to take the subway. The apartment stock's been fine. You're seeing new retailers open. On the office side, if you haven't invested capital in your assets, you're in a tough spot. If you've invested capital, we're seeing flight to quality. We're seeing office tenants sign leases and make long-term commitments. I think that the tricky piece is if you walk around any of that space, there's nobody in it, or there's 15 or 20 or 30% of the people in there. So I think it's too early to tell. It's going to be, and John had mentioned it just with e-commerce. I think Jeff had mentioned it too, that 100% of retail sales aren't going to be e-commerce. There's a stasis at a certain point. I think we saw the same thing in retail with grocery sales and restaurant sales. Like this was all the talk 20 years ago where everyone was nervous that restaurant sales were eclipsing grocery sales. And what does that mean? Is the grocery store extinct, and how's that going to change? At a certain point, it reached a stasis, right? Like people go out a lot to eat now, more than they did 40 years ago, but they still shop at a grocery store. And we think the same thing is going to happen to e-commerce and retail sales. We think the same thing will happen on the office side. There'll be a stasis. There'll be some hybrid work arrangement where people come 2, 3, 4 days a week. Underutilized B office or C office that hasn't been invested in is going to get demolished and repositioned as industrial or apartments.
Like right now, the job market is pro the person looking for the job. I mean, there's still pendulums and cycles that change that dynamic, and that could take a turn as well over the next with what's going on now. And it's just I just don't believe that it's not going to be a core component. Just like I always felt retail was never going away. It's just going to be different, right? Like we overdid retail. Now we sort of are bringing it back. And I mean, I think there was a statistic in we were 23 square foot per person of retail in the United States. So I think in China it was like 12 per square feet I mean, we were way over retailed for years. So you're going to start to see that be reimagined and changed. And that's just the way it's going to, be an office. Same thing.
What about hospitality? You didn't mention hospitality, right? You have Marriott or 2 or 3.
We're sharing a microphone, so. It's a great question. So we have been fortunately seeing the ramp up over recent months, especially here at the Marriott. And for a long time, felt like an even longer time. You know, this ballroom, the common areas out there, Pancetta, the restaurant, the M Club, the bars, you know, no souls within, you know, within any site. Luckily and fortunately, that's changing. This room has been filled with large events in you know, recent weeks and days, and we're hoping to, you know, see more of that. A lot more group business has been booking here. Occupancy is ramping up slowly but steadily. Across the street at the dual-branded hotel, it's a different, you know, dynamic with those brands. We have a Hampton Inn and Suites and Homewood Suites. Those are Hilton products, but those are select service and extended stay hotels. And there are 2 hotels in that one building. So aside from that building being a new project that opened up in late 2018, and this Marriott being a very, you know, well-established hotel, those are more for, you know, moderately priced leisure and business travelers, but also people who want to experience more of a residential experience with very long stays, which is the Homewood Suites. So those rooms will have, you know, a small kitchen and feel more like a luxury apartment than, say, at the Marriott or even the Hampton. But to answer the question, you know, we were most impacted here at the Marriott as a full-service hotel that caters to large groups, banquets, and whose you know, room occupancy very much depends on that group business, those banquet events, and you know, all the things that we basically couldn't do for the longest time after the pandemic hit. So we're coming back. We've seen a significant uptick in events, and like I said, these rooms, most importantly, you know, what I'm saying, you know, it might sound good to us, but it really doesn't matter until we see, you know, the proof is in the people, and these rooms have been filled, and it's just been great to see that, to feel that, you know, energy back, and you know, get that sense of normalcy coming back to life.
All right, I want to thank the panel very much for a very interesting evening. I think the information was very helpful to everybody here. Unless anybody has anything else they want to say, we'll start with coffee and dessert. And I just want to remind the rest of the Ioreba crew, we do have a golf outing on June 27th coming up, so don't forget that. That'll be up on the website soon. And Ann, thank you very much for all the hard work, Ann Violet, putting this whole thing together.